Hi, everybody. I'm Tamara Zoner.
And I'm John Davis.
Welcome to Spirit Cafe.
Come in, sit down, and
grab a cup of love.
A Spirituality Without the Guilt podcast. Hey, guys, it's John Davis, and I am here today, and I'm very excited. In my life, every so often I'll meet somebody who just wows me and really just bowls me over. And today's guest is one such person who did that to me. And I could have spoken to her for hours upon hours, but I promise we're going to keep this shorter than that today. But before we bring her in, let me first bring in my lovely cohort in crime, or co-host in crime, the lovely Tamara Zoner. How are you today, Tamara?
I'm very well, John. How are you? I
am giddy excited this morning. I mean, literally giddy excited because I love our guest. I just love our guest. She and I got into some real deep conversation, and I love my deep conversations. And so I'm going to go ahead and introduce her, and then we can get into and let her kind of tell us who she is, because her titles are really kind of interesting, and to the point where I want to make sure I don't say it wrong. So I'm just going to introduce her by name and let her give her own titles, if that's cool. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very excited to introduce to you my friend from lifetimes ago, Hema Vyas. Hello, Hema. How are you?
Hi, John. Hi, Tamara. Lovely to be here, John. I'm so excited to be here talking to you again, especially in the Spirit Cafe. Grab a cup of love. I love that. Beautiful.
Tamara, I'm sorry, Hema, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and especially those titles, because the titles to me were interesting.
So I don't think I can remember all of them, but they're kind of really cool, right? So, I'm definitely an outside of the box thinker. I'm what I call myself as an omnipreneurial psychologist. And that comes from, being more than a psychologist, being very spiritual, hence the word omni, but also entrepreneurial. So, it's sort of how we bring wellness and spirituality to leadership and to life and to all aspects of life. So that's the main thing. I'm a speaker, soon to be published author, but also, I speak to the silent heartache of high achievers. Really, that's the thing that I love the most. And so my conversations are really about how we can go deep and connect with people on a deeper level, not just on the superficial. What are the ways that we can work with people on a superficial, processes, etc., etc. It's about how do we dig deep into our hearts, into our souls? How do we connect with the heart energy? How do we use and harness the heart energy in order to find prosperity, to find love, to find meaning, and to have a life that is worth living?
How perfect that for my co-host who has a website called, what's it called, Tamara?
A Life You Love Now.
A Life You Love Now.
Amazing.
How completely
definitely
perfect.
Resonating with that message. I'm so curious about the silent heartache of high achievers. I love that phrasing, and I wonder if you could say more about that.
Yeah, so I started my journey really very, very quickly, being quite sort of shy, quite quiet, and finding myself being able to speak to people who are, pretty high up in terms of business and corporate. And the reason was because, I'm very intuitive, I'm very empathic, and I had no boundaries when it came to, who I spoke to. There's no hierarchy in the spiritual world, right? And so, I just used to speak to people so easily and effortlessly, no matter where they were at, no matter who they were. And so, people who were particularly high achievers really, really resonated with me, and I resonated with them, and they opened up to me so, in a way that they couldn't with other people. Suddenly there was, as John and I had that depth of conversation that would just happen almost organically, very, very quickly. And they would open up about the things they were struggling with, whether it was their personal life, professional life, social life. It didn't matter what it was. We all have heartache. We all have areas where we're struggling, and we don't need to compartmentalize it. And so, being able to really get to the heart of things very quickly, being that ear that could, really hear what was said behind the words that they were using. So it wasn't always about what they were saying. I could cut through to whatever was going on for them on a deeper level. And they really appreciated it, because I guess it came from a space and place of non-judgment, but it also came from a space and place of solution orientated. I mean, these are words I use now, but that wasn't how it was. It was just organic. I would just say something that would speak to their heart, and they would just go, oh my God, I want to talk to you more. And, and they needed the help. And so that's why I use that phrase, because I particularly love it. And I think it speaks to people who really need it.
I love the fact that when you speak to someone, especially high achievers, especially because they tend to have an ego in play a lot of times. And
Absolutely.
and I mean, the out of balance ego just means self-awareness, but an out of balance ego is often, but I love when you say you can connect to them on such a level that they hear like the universal truth of what you're saying. They're hearing beyond the out of balance ego and into the depth of their souls. And to me, that's kind of the goal of all of us who are into spirituality, is to reach to that place of the depth of their soul and let them find those universal truths for themselves. Do you find that in your working with high achievers that um, you help them find their way rather than show them the way?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's, exactly as you said, that universal truth. When you name it and it resonates, they know when it resonates, and they're able to pick up on that. And that's how they then begin to journey into the sort of realms of spirituality. Because of course a lot of people think, what's that got to do with business? What's that got to do with me finding love? And what's that got to do with prosperity or abundance or health? And I say, universal laws help us connect with everything we need in the here and now, and it doesn't matter what category of life it applies to. And absolutely, it's about helping people find their own truth, because, there's a spiritual cosmic truth, but there's also what is true for each individual. The reason why we're all different and yet we're all collective is because we've got our own destinies. And so therefore my truth cannot necessarily apply to someone, because their circumstances or where they're looking at it from is completely different to mine. But when you connect them with what is ultimately true, that spirit and spirituality is such an essential part of our lives. If we're to find meaning, if we're to find happiness, then we have to trust in something higher than just our intellect and just our sense of physical presence, because there is another presence that exists within all of us, and that higher truth, that higher consciousness is what we need to be connecting to. So I think I guide them to that realization, and then everything else begins to fall into place.
That's so beautiful. And I think, regardless of whatever words you're using, what they're hearing is love. And you emanate love and radiate it. And that's like so beautiful. And that's what cuts through whatever is going on for people, is that not just a message of love, but a feeling of love, an intention of love. I love it. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. I agree so much. And that's definitely one of the things that I really work with, is like, how do we bring love back into our lives, to really, really bring the feeling of love, and not just as a romantic notion, but as a felt energy, a frequency that applies to, again, everything in all aspects of life. And, it is the difference between coming from a place of love and coming from a place of fear. And the more we deny love in our lives, the more we think, oh, that's, I've got no room in my life for to talk about love as an, kind of notion, the more we're tuning into fear on some level, whether we're conscious of it or not. So it's really, really important that we do talk about love. So thank you for sharing that.
You know that you're speaking my language, so it's it's
I do.
So very in our language, with the word language. One of the things that I have run into, because I since we have spoken last, Hema, I recommitted myself to doing a larger spiritual work, and I'm doing a bigger thing right now. And one of the things that I'm running into is that when I talk about love and fear and connecting to that, such a simple place. It's right there in our choice, right? Mm-hmm. And what I find is that a lot of people, when you say spirituality, they're looking for the light show. They're looking for the dog and pony mystical experiences, and mm-hmm. I find that it's much more subtle. It's much more loving and smooth and easy, rather than big giant boom light shows. Do you find that you sometimes have to, when you start talking spirituality with someone, that you kind of have to adjust their process about spiritual principles or spiritual experiences?
Absolutely. Language is a really interesting thing, and I think we have to use language that resonates with where people are. And I think that's, definitely part of the skill set. When you're sort of intuitive, you're able to sort of tap into, the synchronicity we had with, Tamara's website.
I'll help her out. Right. Tamara,
sorry.
I have to tell how many times.
That's all right. Tamara, you should have heard me try to say Hema's name when we first met.
Tamara, so sorry, Tamara. The synchronicity we had with the website. When we're tuning into people, I think we tune into the language that resonates with them. And when we tune into the language that resonates with them, I think, there's definitely an adjustment that happens, but also I think we have to go outside of the comfort zone and start speaking to people a little bit about, spirituality and spiritual principles. And maybe one of the ways is, definitely for me, is about using the language of the heart and the heart energy, and how, there is science now to prove that there is something in how the heart emits this energy and what it does and how it sort of attracts and repels. And so it's about finding the right language. But I do feel that, yes, of course, some people are not open to it and some people are definitely not wanting to hear it. But again, I think when we realize that everybody's struggling on some way, then when you connect with the ways in which they're struggling, often they're very open to hearing what else they can do, because everybody wants to get out of that pain point. Everybody wants to get out of that space and place where they're struggling. So, yeah, definitely.
I could not agree more. I have from my own personal spiritual belief, I believe that we're in this physical world to experience our separation from source, our separation from love, through our exploration of our fears. Like we talked about before in Sufism, they talk about, God being on one side of a veil and we're on the other side of the veil, and the veil is our fear, and life is the struggle against that veil. And I think that when you, as Yoda would say in Star Wars, named must your fear be, before banish it you can. You've got to go to that place and name the fear. And sometimes when you go to someone who is so in a place of being an authority or a higher up, and especially in a corporation, they have a face to keep, and to hit them in a level where you're hitting them on their fears that they've denied having for so long can be an interesting animal, because they're not supposed to show fear at that level. And I think what you're offering them is an opportunity to be vulnerable and show their authentic self, which actually will increase their bottom lines. Absolutely, 100%.
Absolutely. And, improve the culture of the space, because at the end of the day, we are drawn to leaders who not only emanate what we admire and respect, but we're also drawn to leaders who emanate what we're aspiring to be. And I think, certainly the sort of new generations coming into the sort of workspace, that's what they want. They want authenticity, they want vulnerability, they want to be able to talk about the things that they're afraid of, and how to deal with it. And I think in the past, John, the reason why they struggled was because they didn't know what the answers were. So they were afraid to show their vulnerability, or to say they're afraid, or they don't have the answers, because where else were they going to go? If they were the leaders, they were pretty high up, who do they turn to? And now I think there are, lots of people like myself, like yourselves, people who are speaking to these people and helping them realize that it doesn't have to be something that holds them back indefinitely. It can be something that they can open up to and find solutions and find a way out of that space of fear. And sometimes it means a leap of faith, so not just doing what they know how to do, but doing something that is outside of their comfort zone, like meditation, like taking up things like yoga, like taking up things like, understanding spirituality and how it might relate to where they're at and what's going on for them, and how it might relate to their business, or how it may relate to their individual lives. But I think there are answers now, and I think that has been a turning point, that there are solutions, and I think people realize that you don't have to be afraid of being afraid anymore.
Oh, that's a quotable. So good.
Thank you.
So it is a quotable. It is an amazing quotable. You don't have to be afraid of being afraid anymore. It's so interesting to me when I talk to you, Hema. I just get a feeling from you as you speak. The only other time I've really had this feeling when I was in Egypt, I ended up meeting a guy named Dr. Hakim. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He was one of the foremost archaeologists of Egypt, and very, very deeply spiritual man. And I don't mean like he was a Muslim, but he was very much into all spirituality. And I went to his house, and I felt like sitting at his feet, and just listening, because the way he spoke and the things he said were so profound to me. And I love the fact that, he brought us into the house, and he treated us as equals. So that was just the best part, and being able to bathe in that feeling of love from him is what I experience when I'm speaking with you. When you are out and you're doing your work, do you find people like that you just want to bathe in their essence, as it were?
Absolutely, but unfortunately not as much as I would like to. Growing up, just really being honest, John, growing up, I thought the whole world was full of people that I would be learning from, and, really bathing in the truth, that they're speaking and sharing, and the knowledge. And there's so much information, and there's so many people sharing so much beautiful information and knowledge and wisdom right now. But unfortunately, I feel like one of the sticking points is, and this is where we really need to be better at this, people need to be better at this, is being able to really, really walk our walk and talk our talk. There are a lot of people who are able to talk about some amazing things, and I think, wow, I love what you're saying. And then I find myself in their presence, and I just know that there's something wrong. I won't go into the sort of people I'm talking about, but there's something where they're not actually practicing what they're preaching. And for me, because, I pick up on the energy and I feel it. And if I can feel that that's not where they're at, then I don't necessarily want to bathe, because wisdom doesn't come from what you know. When you talk about this gentleman, Hakim, wisdom comes from having lived it, whether it's in lifetimes, because we're old souls here, right? And so I think old souls get it, that we've accumulated this wisdom through lifetimes. I don't have to have children in this lifetime to know what it means to bring up children, the importance of how we relate to them, how we connect with them, because I know that it's in my DNA, and I know that it's, through lifetimes I've accumulated this knowledge. But in this lifetime, I still have to practice what I've experienced and learned and brought over lifetimes. And there are lots of people, I think, are old souls and probably have access to beautiful wisdom and are beautiful souls, but they've lost it because they've got lost somewhere in the rat race. They've got lost in sort of trying to catch up with their egos that wants them to be successful, instead of really living a purposeful life. And success is its own reward, just because you're doing what you're here to do. If you change one person's life, that is more meaningful than thousands of people, but they're not living your truth. And so there are amazing people out there for sure. I haven't come across all of them, of course, but I do love it when I meet people like this, when I meet people on podcasts and I get to talk to people, and I know the people who are living, what they're breathing and living what they're saying and what they're talking about, because when I'm in their presence, I get to open up, they get to open up, and there's a sharing that happens that is so, so important and so profound. And for me, that's priceless. And that's what I really, really value.
That's how I felt when I met you.
Absolutely right. We had this mutual kind of connection, and and I feel like that's probably true of you too, Tamara, that there's this space that we can create where our hearts can just open. And when our hearts can open, we share something that people need to hear. We don't know who it is, we don't know what they're going to get out of it, but I just know that someone out there is going to get something so important from this exchange. And it might be nothing to do with what's said, it might be everything to do with what's felt, and that's so important.
Right. Yes, it's so beautiful. And I appreciate that, what you said so much, because I've felt very similarly. There are great teachers saying really impressive things and opening my mind, but the heart isn't matching. And then when I learn about how they run their businesses or how they treat their people, it's very clear that they're out of integrity and not walking their talk. And one of the devotions I've made to myself and in my work is to never teach something I haven't learned for myself, lived for myself, or that I'm not currently experiencing or learning from or growing from. It has to be an authentic felt experience for me to teach it. And so I actually feel like really open right now in the way that I incorporate my own personal experience into my work and my teaching. Some people say, oh, don't share your whole story, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's such a vital aspect of the way that teachers like us teach, because then it demonstrates and people feel it, that we're teaching from our lived experience, whether in this life or the past. But it's so much more meaningful and so much more connecting and so much more loving, I feel, when we share from our own, heartfelt learnings.
Absolutely. I love that. And that's so, so true. And, and sometimes, it's our own realization. So we might read something or we might listen to someone and it opens up our own minds. But ultimately, we've got to go and somehow integrate it into our hearts so that it becomes our truth, so that it becomes something we truly understand, as opposed to just regurgitating what someone else has said or what someone else is preaching. And I think that shines through. I think it shines through for people, and we are living in a bit of a funny world at the moment. But the authentic self truly shines through, because when those people who are authentic meet each other, there's just beauty, right?
Right. It's interesting we're having this conversation today, because I had an interesting exchange yesterday with someone who called himself Bodhisattva, which I thought was rather interesting. He called himself that because his initial email to me was all about judging me for the way I teach and who I am, and being very critical. And I said, my response was, I think it's interesting that the tone of your email, considering you're calling yourself Bodhisattva, right? I just thought it was sort of antithetical, right? It didn't work together. There was something there. And the further we got down the rabbit hole, it became very clear. As I said earlier, he was looking for that light show. He was looking for that dog and pony show that was spirituality, but more so, and I find this to be very prevalent in the new age / metaphysical community. A lot of people are using it to put themselves in a position of power over others. They're claiming that they're this guru or this teacher, when in reality they're not living it and they're not being the example of it, which is what a bodhisattva is. It's an example to follow, right? And to me, I thought it was rather interesting. Do you find that in going between the corporate environment and the spiritual community, that you find those similarities in both places?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it's exactly as you say, John, that, there are people who will give themselves these titles or, these accolades and, but what does it really mean? And I think it's, how they're living their life that really, really shines through what's true. You can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, but, it's about what you're doing with that title. And so, and I feel like there are so many people who go off and just learn something and then adapt or adopt that sort of situation, that title or status or whatever it might be. Even in work, corporate, the leaders, it's like you don't just call yourself a leader. The real leader, it doesn't matter what status you're at. It sort of shines through if you really are really genuinely doing that. And in your personal life, if you're doing the work, it really, really shines through. And that's why I say there are no shortcuts to doing the work. You cannot just assume that you are something because you've read about it or know about it or learned something about it. You have to do the work to actually embody it. And if you're not embodying it, then, eventually it's not going to be sustainable. At the beginning, people might go, oh my God, he's a guru, amazing. She's a guru, amazing. But eventually they'll know whether it's true or not, and it won't be sustainable long term.
One of the things you said earlier, which I latched onto because I had just done a video about it recently, was the concept of knowing and feeling. Well, it's knowledge and wisdom. Right? Knowledge is in the head and wisdom is in the heart. And I came up with a theory recently about the Bible story, or the Torah story even, about Adam and Eve. And I did a video called Eve Was Not the Villain. Right. And
Right.
What was interesting was, what was the transgression? The transgression was that they ate from the tree of knowledge. And by eating from the tree of knowledge, they went down all these rabbit holes of thinking rather than staying in the feeling place of where God's source is. And so when you were talking, I was talking about the wisdom of the heart and the thinking of the brain. I often say spirituality is not a thinking, it's a feeling. And
That's right.
It's kind of hard to teach because people have lost their way in their mind, and they wrap these stories around spirituality about, I am the Bodhisattva because I've decided that I'm that, or I am, whatever they decide they are. They've wrapped these stories, these thinking stories, around a feeling that they've kind of lost. And I find that I'm constantly trying to let them feel that again, come back to the feeling, make them laugh, get them smile. There's a very simple connection to that source. And I think the work that you're doing is really important because you're bringing it to people who just innately have lost a lot of it because they're so wrapped in the thinking of business,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so interesting because, it is exactly as you say, it's all the stories. And that's why I say that, the titles are irrelevant, because, the minute you get attached to something like that, you're not in your heart. We're forever changing, we're evolving all the time, and what's right in one moment is not right in the other moment. And where people are lost, I would say, is because they're too attached to the physical. They're too attached to the things that they think are tangible and they can hold on to. But the feeling aspect, the heart aspect, is intangible. And that's why it's important that people come back to the intangibles. Like love, it's important they come back to the intangibles. We don't need structures in our life so much as we need, that intention. When we come from the right intention, the structures create themselves. When we come from the right space in the heart, we find the knowledge that resonates and matches that frequency in the heart, that intention in the heart. And people don't realize, the truth is, John, this is so much easier. We've got, right? They've got lost in trying so hard and trying so desperately to sort of find happiness, to find that sense of abundance or that sense of well-being. And it's like, it's so easy because it's simply about letting go. And the more you let go, the more you let go of the titles and the judgments and the stories and all of these things that keep us all stuck, the easier it is to find our way. And, finding our way is what we're all about, right? Finding our way back home, finding our way back into the heart, finding our way back to truth. That's where real happiness lies. That's where real prosperity lies. And so, yeah, I love that, your heart being in an open space just creates the space for others to do the same. And that is so simple. But people don't trust that. And that's what, we're all about, right? Teaching them how to trust, the simplicity of life and how it can make life so much easier for us to get to where we all want to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And teaching people that they are their own guru. I think that's what a true leader is someone who empowers another to trust themselves, believe in themselves, and find their own answers.
Absolutely, because otherwise you're just leading them down your rabbit hole, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have never written down so much in an interview before. I'm like, oh, that's a quotable. That's a quotable. I work with intention a lot, and so when we come from intention, the structures create themselves. It's so gorgeous because people are, I'm often framing it with the word how. The how is none of our business, right? So
Right.
You determine what you want your life to look and feel like, and then you release the how. You take action toward those things, but the how is none of your business. The how, I forget who said this, but I heard this, the how will reveal itself through your consistent, imperfect action. And that to me is exactly what you just said. The structures create themselves when you move with intention. So beautiful. Hema, you're so beautiful in and out and all around. Oh, this is a good one, John. Good recommendation.
Oh my gosh. I could not recommend Hema any higher. I find her just lovely in every aspect. I'm just excited to have you here today, Hema. It's so wonderful. So tell us about this book that you're writing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, so it's about the heart. It's about what the heart energy is and how it is both a magnet and also it attracts what we need in our life, and every experience that we have is what we need. And so the idea that we can push things away and not look at them and deny them, everything is about getting back to the truth. And so when we really, really connect with our heart space and connect with the heart energy, and we understand what it does for us, how it is actually the guiding principle in our life, it is the guiding force in our life, it is here to guide us. And that's why we all have our own heartbeats, we all have our own heart that resonate at a frequency that is right for us. And the only work we need to do is keep on clearing it, and the more clear it is, the more it sends out the right frequency to attract the right things into our lives. But it also repels whatever we're not ready for. And so people who are struggling either repeating patterns or not getting what they want, the answer is really simple. We sort of got to come back into the heart. You can do all the doing, as you said, Tamara, that the how will figure itself out. That's not our business, and that's what I say. That the heart's always guiding us to the how. We're just not listening because we think we should be this linear process, and it's not. And so really my book is about the process and the unfolding and the unveiling of the heart energy, and to really understand how it is really, really here, and the fact that we relegated it for so long and gave so much precedence to sort of our minds and to our brains and to thinking that we've denied the heart. And so how we can come back to the heart space and why it's so important. The divine feminine, and it's not about gender, it's everything to do with the energies that have been sort of pushed aside. The divine feminine needs to be balanced, brought back into balance with the divine masculine, and we both need to learn to live side by side within ourselves, because we have both the masculine and feminine inside of us, and how we can bring balance to the left and right side of the brain, to step back into our hearts and to allow the heart to be that portal to open up to infinite possibilities, and not just as a cliche, but as a genuine living experience of how we can open ourselves up to living so much more, like a much more meaningful life, a much more significant life than we've been doing so far, because we've got lost in the thinking, the science, the proving something empirically with data and evidence, when there's a whole world that exists outside of data and evidence, and a whole world that exists outside of the realm of our thinking, even the realm of our imagination, because our imagination can only stretch so far. And then we've got to go even deeper into the heart to allow an expansion to occur, so that the imagination can expand, so that we allow new and different experiences onto this planet, so that we no longer live in that mundane space of survival, because that's where a lot of people are stuck. And we're not here to survive, we are absolutely here to thrive and flourish.
Yes.
Can I get an amen?
I feel like I've just gone through a bit of meditation. And I can't wait to read this book. So when do you expect it to come out? How can we get our hands on it?
Oh, well, I think I might have mentioned before, but I will definitely be letting you guys know, and perhaps, we'll have another chat at the time of release, but hopefully next year. Yeah,
wonderful.
early
I'd love
year.
to have another chat. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited to read that book. I'm excited to promote that book. I'm excited to do whatever I can to help you, Hema. I really am. Because I think that you bring so much to the world, and I think you bring so much to put it, a vibration. You just vibrate love, and I think that's part of those people who are truly living their authentic self. It's part of our job, is to be our authentic self and vibrate that loving essence here, so that we can change the vibration of here. So how do people get a hold of you, Hema?
Absolutely. Can I just say that, I'm absolutely the same for both of you. There's such my whole place is just buzzing with this energy. And, and that's the other thing we need to just to quickly acknowledge, that, when hearts really open and come together in a space of love, they send out such a powerful vibration of love to the people around them and the world around them. It's so important, so important. So thank you so much for having me here today. I really appreciate the energy that I'm getting from both of you. It's just so beautiful, so beautiful. But yeah, so the best way to get hold of me is my website, hemavyas.com, but also I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, A little bit on Facebook, not really, but a little bit there. So just have a bit of a presence. But really, LinkedIn is my sort of social media home. But I have presence on Instagram, and I have a community which is called Heart Renaissance. So for anybody listening, and do join Heart Renaissance community. It's completely free. I share lots of different talks and meditations, and when like winter solstice will come along, I'll probably do a meditation then. So there's just lots of different resources that are all free. And of course, there are courses that I do run that are paid for. But, do join my community. You can connect with the community through hemavyas.com.
Wonderful. And John, of course, will put all of that information in the show notes.
Hell, I'm going to go outside and shout it next to the highway. Hey, you!
You'll be seeing me in your community.
That'd be lovely. Thank you.
Vibration of this space. We're not in an actual room together, but it feels like it. And I was thinking to myself, wow, I can like feel my whole being upgrading right now, just in the space of this conversation. It's so lovely.
So beautiful.
It is lovely. So Tamara, you want to close us out of this thing?
I do. Well, I don't, but I will.
I don't want to go. I want to go forever.
We'll end the broadcast, but not the energy, because that's ever present and always existing here and there and everywhere. And so thank you so much, John, for telling me to connect with Hema and get her on this Spirit Cafe podcast, and to Hema for sharing your beautiful wisdom with us and just your spirit and your energy. It's been such a gorgeous, 35, 40 minutes. And I'm so grateful. And I'm grateful to all of our listeners and viewers for being here. We love to hear from you. So tell us what you think in whatever place you're listening, and share what depth you got from this, because I like to make up words. So this was so depthful, so full of depth. And I know that everyone listening has felt something and been moved by this conversation. So please share with us what that was for you, so that we can all expand together into deeper and greater consciousness. And we will talk to you again next week.
Thank you for joining us at Spirit Cafe, a place where you can safely explore your spirituality without the guilt or dogma of religion. Leave all comments and suggestions on the Spirit Cafe podcast Facebook page.